Enjoy Masuhara, and I am the current co-chair of Women Transforming Cities. And my sort of day job, I work as a physician in Vancouver. I work with older adults in the mental health area, and I just started a new job as a regional medical director for diversity, equity, inclusion. I am a third generation Japanese Canadian. I'm also a lesbian, and yeah, those are probably my major intersections. I was born here, born and raised in East Vancouver. My grandparents were the early immigrants to this country, so they came from Japan probably in the earlier part of the 20th century. So both my parents were born in Canada. So yeah, so I grew up, being third generation. Well, a few things. Both my parents' families were interned during World War II, when Canadians of Japanese heritage were taken off the coast of BC. And actually, there was just an announcement by the BC government on redress around this event and acknowledging the participation of the BC government at the time in that basically racist incident that happened. So I grew up with that legacy, and I think because of that, there was a real push to have us really integrated rather than learning the language. I never learned the language, although it was spoken by my parents. I never picked it up. We had a very sort of mixed Western Asian culture at home. But I didn't feel like really super connected to the Japanese Canadian community in Vancouver, and probably didn't really think about it a whole lot growing up. I grew up in a very white Vancouver, and I think I just kind of at some points actually didn't see myself as Asian even. Later on, of course, when you're a child, you're unaware of a lot of things. But as you grow, and actually even as a child, there were racist incidents that I can recall. As an adult, I recognized that I didn't have a lot of roots in my my culture. So I deliberately decided I wanted to remedy that a little bit. So I joined a Japanese drumming group because I was kind of crazy about drumming at that time. So I joined Katari Taiko, which was the first Japanese drumming group in Canada. And they formed back in the 70s as a basically to bring more awareness of Japanese culture to the area, Vancouver area, and also as a political action in terms of the redress movement for Japanese Canadians that was going on at the time. So that's the group I joined, not in '79, but a lot later, and played with them for a while. But that certainly brought me more awareness of some of the at least the drumming culture. New Year's. So New Year's, because Christmas is not as big a celebration in Japan, and for the Japanese community, although as you become sort of westernized, certainly we celebrated Christmas as I was growing up. That's interesting. I just thinking about how the dominant culture, because you have the holidays, the statutory holidays related to the dominant culture. That's what you end up celebrating, because
Yeah.
that's when you have the holidays. Um, but anyway, the Japanese New Year's is the same. You know, it was January 1st, and for us that was always a big time of gathering with the family, having incredible food, Japanese food, and other types of food, but lots. But the key thing was lots of food, sushi. And my grandmother from my mother's side, she was a really great cook, and she was that side of the family was the Steveston fishing family. So she cooked some really great traditional foods, and so I remember, so you know, sashimi and sushi and oh, prawns and lots of seafood,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, it was just a really huge family gathering. That was a large family on that side, and so yeah, lots of cousins and lots of um, yeah, lots of just a good time
Yeah.
together. We would kind of spend the whole day together because everyone would gather, and all the women, of course, would be in the kitchen cooking all day,
Mm.
and the men would be watching all the football, you know, all the bowl games, football games on TV. So you can see the blend of cultures, you know,
Mhm.
the cooking of traditional foods, and then watching football games in the other room. So there was always this blend of cultures. I think there's a lot to it. It's a way, you know, of sort of bringing some focus. Not that we shouldn't be focusing on, you know, racism and you know, other colonialism, etc., all the time, but it does give a chance to focus on a particular community or particular communities and say, one, to celebrate them, but also, you know, celebrate the diversity, um, but also to recognize the history, so that you know, we can really see things currently in context of what has happened before.
Mhm.
Um, so, and we do have a racist history, unfortunately, in British Columbia and Canada. Um, you know, particularly towards our Indigenous people, of course, but also to the Black community and to all people of color. And in BC, particularly some of the Asian populations, because of the, you know, large immigration from that area to to the coast. So um, that is also meaningful for this Asian Heritage Month. You know, is that we also reflect on the past, and how, and you know, and how that still affects now. We know that, you know, the rise of anti Asian uh, crimes, incidents, etc., has risen, particularly during COVID.
Mhm.
Uh, so this is, you know, this is something that's not gone away from our society, and it's so it's how do we use events like, you know, Asian Heritage Month or Pride Month or, you know, Indigenous History Month or Black History Month? How do we use them to sort of build bridges and understanding, and you know, not in a way of, you know, shaming and blaming, but you know, learning and growing, so that we can all be together and work together for, you know, for a better world. I guess
Yeah.
that's what I would I would hope that these special months and days, etc., can be. That it's not just a reflection for that month or that day, but it's in us really thinking about, okay, what actions can I take from now going forward, you know, through the rest of the year and on, to to you know, to improve. A part of, you know, this type of work is you have to have the passion for it, because it's hard work, um, particularly around things like anti racism work, or gender equity work. Um, it is hard work, and it can be triggering. So I think you have to have the passion for it, and the that just knowing that you just have to do it. And even though it's hard, and even though it takes long, and it can be really discouraging, and it feels like everything moves so slowly, you just have to believe and stay optimistic that even small things that you think may have no impact at all, actually somewhere along the way might have some impact. The other thing is doing it with other people, and so not doing it in isolation. So I was always sort of doing things, the activist work with other people. And that's where you can um, have strength, support, uh, you know, collective ideas are often better than, just your own. And yeah, it's a building of community because you have a common goal often. So I think, those are the things you need, that inner kind of faith, I guess, that what you're doing, even if it doesn't feel like it's doing anything, you just keep going, uh, and hope that things do change. And then the other thing that, I think we often, particularly people, who are doing this work, and see some of the backward sliding that happens, is to really notice the changes and notice where things are moving in the right direction. Because we often, can focus on the negative things and the crises and the things where you feel like, oh my goodness, this is all going backwards now. Thinking about abortion
Mhm.
rights in the U.S., etc. Um, that we do have to continue to see where the light where the light is. So I think that's helpful to keep us going as well.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, do it together. Learn as you go. You know that you're going to make mistakes and learn from them. That's just how you kind of have to keep doing it. Women Transforming Cities is, okay, maybe a little bit biased, but I think it's really, um, it always has been a grassroots, really committed organization, and bringing lots of brilliant people together, and we're continuing to do that and really growing it, particularly with our staff now. Um, so I'd like to see this, the growth continue, that we keep our values, that we really keep that keep intersectionality as a core, that we are continuing to sort of challenge ourselves, and really um, work to make that real. There's always things that we can do to improve. So I mean, I know we're doing some very good work right now on the calls to action around the TRC, um, but there's always more that can be done, particularly for Indigenous people. So so yeah, I would like to see us continue to move in some of the directions that we're moving in. A couple of weekends ago, um, there was a ceremony in Lillooet. It was the opening of a memorial garden
Mm.
to the internment camp that was uh, in East Lillooet, was just across the river from Lillooet. And that's the camp that my father's family um, spent the first part of the war at.
Mm.
So they had a ceremony there. It was all organized through the municipality there, and other organizers from the Japanese Canadian community. Um, it was really moving to be there. One, because my brother, who plays taiko drums, and my nieces, they were invited to play at the ceremony. So so yeah, so they were up drumming. um, they wanted me to drum with them, but I haven't drummed for a while, so I said, no, it's okay. And but there were also elders there from the Japanese Canadian community, and it was really incredible to see. There was 100-year-old survivor from that camp, and uh, he was um, there was a baseball team in Vancouver that was from the Japanese Canadian community, and so he was one of the star players on that baseball team, and so he was at the ceremony wearing his baseball cap,
Mm.
and I got to speak to him later, um, but he just was this gentleman, and apparently the baseball team was because they did play baseball at the internment camp. It was one of the times when the communities actually came together. So they played baseball. They played baseball together,
Mm.
which is kind of an interesting thing. And then the other thing that was really well, the whole thing was really quite moving. Beautiful, beautiful setting for the garden. Um, but there was the chief from one of the local bands was also at the opening ceremony, and she said a few words, and she talked about her grandfather, who was a chief back when the internment camp was there, who used to bring his cart over the bridge because the communities weren't allowed to integrate, so the Japanese Canadians weren't allowed to cross the bridge over into the town, but he would bring a cart um, with vegetables all on the top of the cart and fish on the bottom, and he would be taking the food to the internment camp. Um, and I remember this story from my father, who said, yeah, they got food from the indigenous communities there, because the amount of food that they could get from Lillooet was limited. And so this was a really neat story that she was able to tell about her grandfather and his um, association with the internment camp. And then they were building a special sort of wall in their band cultural center. They called it Copper Wall. I didn't get to see it, but they were saying that, and so they were including this story in it, which is really, really amazing. It's the connection between the two communities. The memorial garden's open to anyone who travels up that way. It's a beautiful country up there.
Yeah.
It was very emotional.
Yeah.
So there were different things. There was you know, the outrage that you feel
Mm-hmm.
about what happened, particularly the impact on, particularly my grandparents, who worked so hard as immigrants to this country, um, to make a life, for themselves and their families, and how that was all really destroyed so that they had to start all over again. Um, but it also, attests to the resilience of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents and my grandparents and the rest of the community as a whole. Um, and I guess, it also, that inner drive, that inner sort of feeling of continuing to want to make change, because you never want that to happen to anyone ever again.
Mm-hmm.
I think was part of what I came away with. So in terms of healing, I'm not sure if it was true healing, but I'm certainly glad that it was there, and I was able to participate in it. Um, and yeah, just to see that the community itself, is acknowledging what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just you know happy Asian Heritage Month to all of us. We're all in this um, well, sometimes challenging space together. Um, So let's all see what we can do. Like I say, it's always better to do this together.